twins ran that part of London like an iron rod. There was nothing that went on in that East End that they didn't know about. If there was a wrongdoing, get off the manor, because they would come down on you like a ton of bricks.
Welcome back to another Kray video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any videos. And for people really interested in the Krays, check out our private Facebook group, Krays, Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly and moderated group which has been running since January 2018. Please come and give us a try.
Welcome back again. We continue onwards with the Krays story. The Jonathan affair came soon after Joe's injury. Joe was an ex-boxer and an old friend of the Krays, and Jonathan was a hard, good-looking little man, another old friend of the twins. And one night at the barn, the twins heard he had picked a fight with a young man who was the son of one of their allies. This was an indirect challenge. Jonathan should have known better. Reggie was for caution. Ronnie worked himself into a rage. There had to be a showdown. It was 3 a.m., but Ronnie rang Jonathan, saying there was something to discuss and he would be grateful if he would take a taxi around to Wilton Place at once. The barn was closing. The gaming room almost empty. Ronnie was in the kitchen. Jonathan was shown in. When he saw Ronnie, he tried to run. Somebody tripped him, and the kitchen door slammed in his face. There was a sturdy kitchen chair. Jonathan found himself dumped in it, and heard Ronnie tell his brother to hold him down. Then Ronnie took a steel knife sharpener, which he had placed in the gas flame. 3 men remaining in the gaming room heard muffled screams as Ronnie branded Jonathan along each cheek. Soon after this, the twins left Esmeralda's barn for good. The gold mine was in debt. The taxman at the door. The twins had other things to worry them. Ronnie was becoming dangerous. Reggie was doing his lame best to keep him in control. This was hard. Sometimes he found himself involved in the excitement and needed all his strength to remind himself of where the twins' true interests lay. Left to himself, Ronnie would destroy all they had created. All he could think of was his enemies. All that he wanted was to murder them. Half drugged or drunk, he spent his time trying to decide who was against him. One of their boyhood friends had a fight in the car park of the Cambridge Rooms. An ally of the twins ended with a 4-inch gash in his face. For Ronnie, this was a threat. The man who did it would be dealt with. 2 men were hired to shoot him in the legs from a passing car as he left home a few days later. Ronnie was upset to hear later that the men he'd hired had shot the wrong man. It was the culprit's brother, who had to have a leg cut off above the knee. The twins sent him a get-well message, and Reggie organized a boxing benefit to meet the doctor's bills. The one thing Reggie couldn't do was to convince his twin that he had acted cruelly or stupidly. A few days later, somebody showed Ronnie a passage from a Harold Robbins book describing a castration. Ronnie liked it and decided he would try it out on someone. A boy was said to have spoken slightingly about the twins in a Soho bar. He was the perfect victim. Ronnie arranged to have him brought to a flat where he would do the operation, but at the last moment, the man bringing him lost his nerve and the boy vanished. Castration had to wait. Ronnie's sadistic daydreams could continue. In Nigeria, he had been fascinated by reports of the bestialities of the local leopard men. He began studying them, keeping the pictures of their mangled victims carefully mounted in his scrapbook, their livers and hearts removed, according to the caption, to make magic medicine. One night at the Kentucky, he was drinking with two boys. One of them asked how he would like to suffer the sort of pain that he inflicted. Instead of answering, he took out his favorite knife and slowly sliced across his own hand. Someone had to drive him to hospital to have it stitched. Reggie's chief problem was to keep Ronnie away from the police. Argument was useless. Much time that he could ill afford seemed to be spent in keeping him amused. Business began to suffer. There was the perpetual fear that Ronnie would land everyone in some appalling situation. Ronnie's depressions were the greatest hazard. Afterwards, his nightmares started, and he could easily go berserk. Reggie did all he could to keep him happy. They were his boys, and when there was drink. After sufficient gin or brown ale, Ronnie could forget his troubles and doze away safely in the big four-poster bed he had bought for Cedra Court. He also needed people around him, especially since he now enjoyed meeting celebrities. The parties soon started. Soon, they were getting known in certain circles. One night, a well-known television don turned up at Cedra Court. So did a famous disc jockey. Then came actors, a world-famous painter, several boxers, the chairman of an engineering firm, an assortment of men from the city, and two young men in dark suits who turned out to be Church of England clergymen. During his Chelsea days, Ronnie had learned enough of homosexual togetherness to know what was expected. Entertainments were laid on. Some of the success of these at homes must have been due to Ronnie's boys, some to the novelty of the locale. But by far the greatest draw was Ronnie himself. His appearance, his reputation as a criminal, his adroit mixture of sadism and perversion made him a creature of limitless appeal. He exploited the sexual overtones of violence with the same sly gusto that he brought to his more conventional acts of extortion. None of the guests seemed put off by the chance of blackmail or by the dangers of flirting with a potential killer. Presumably, this added to the excitement. Soon, Ronnie was in demand as a guest at certain country houses around London. One he enjoyed was close to Brighton. It was after a weekend here that he first conceived the ambition for a country place of his own. The setup of wealthy upper-class country living appealed to him. He was enjoying his success and the surprising range of intimate friends in high places it afforded. Around this time, a different group of men was taking an interest in him. One was a small man called Reed, who had recently arrived in the East End. He had previously been in Paddington, where the name Kray occasionally cropped up among the criminals he knew. Now that he was a detective inspector at the early age of 36 and attached to Commercial Street Police Station, Leonard Reed was anxious to meet the twins. He had found them elusive, yet the more he learned of local crime, the more important they appeared to be. Witnesses were clamming up. Whenever he asked old East End informers about the twins, they changed the subject. A policeman likes to know what he is up against. When someone told Inspector Reed that the twins often used the Grave Maurice, a pub by Whitechapel Underground Station early in the evening, he decided to go along. Normally, the twins both had a sixth sense about the law and would never enter a pub where there were police. But Reed was new to the district, and when Ronnie strode into the saloon bar of the Morris, gazing around to check on unwelcome visitors, he didn't spare a glance for the man in the grey cap, sitting in the corner with a Worthington and the racing edition of the Evening News. Peer and a Gangster Yard Inquiry, shouted the headlines, and the story splashed across 3/4 of the front page of the Sunday Mirror explained that the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Joseph Simpson, had ordered a top-level investigation into the alleged homosexual relationship between a peer who was a household name and a leading thug in the London underworld who was involved in West End protection rackets. The investigation was being conducted by Detective Chief Superintendent Frederick Gerard, who was inquiring into Mayfair parties the thug and the peer had been to, the peer's weekend visits to Brighton along with a number of prominent public men, his relationships with certain East End gangsters, and a number of clergymen, and allegations of blackmail. Within 48 hours, warned the Sunday Mirror, Sir Joseph would be meeting the Home Secretary to give him details of what the Sunday Mirror was revealing to its readers. Gerard would get his marching orders, then the peer, the gangster, and the erring clergy had better watch out. With this front-page salvo in the Sunday Mirror, the so-called case of the Brighton Pier began. This was the 12th of July 1964. Things soon began to happen. Early next morning, a photographer called Bernard Black from Clapton came to the Mirror picture desk, claiming to have a reel of photographs of the pier and the gangster. And that day at New Scotland Yard, Sir Joseph Simpson prepared a public statement denying the suggestion that Her Majesty's Commissioner of Police was starting a private witch hunt against titled homosexuals. It expressed pained surprise at the suggestion that he personally ordered an investigation into a relationship between a peer and a man with a criminal record. It denied that he was giving the Home Secretary details from such an investigation. It denied that such an investigation had ever taken place. Just after tea time, Bernard Black, the photographer, returned to the Mirror offices at Holborn Circus, asking for his pictures back and saying that the copyright was not his to sell. The Mirror refused to return them. The next morning, Black was in the High Court applying for an injunction forbidding the Daily Mirror or the Sunday Mirror to publish his pictures under any circumstances. That Tuesday, Superintendent Gerard, the man the Mirror named as head of the officially denied investigation, asked to see the Mirror's dossier in which the allegations were made. There was no dossier. Editor Payne admitted as much, although a phalanx of reporters had been working hard since dawn, trying to make good the deficiency. On Thursday, the 16th of July, the Mirror led with massive headlines on the picture we dare not print. It described how this picture on its files showed a well-known member of the House of Lords seated on a sofa with a gangster who leads the biggest protection racket London has ever known. Then an article appeared on the 22nd of July in the West German Stern magazine entitled Lord Boothby in Trouble. Unworried by the distant hazards of English libel, the magazine named Boothby and Ronnie Kray as the subjects of the Mirror story and published a picture of both twins in boxing kit alongside an early photograph of Boothby with Winston Churchill. Lord Boothby retained Arnold Goodman, Harold Wilson's personal solicitor, now Lord Goodman, and Gerald Gardner, QC, who later became the Labour government's Lord Chancellor. Normally, when an individual considers himself libelled, he seeks redress at law, but Lord Boothby's new advisers suggested a more direct course. Under their supervision, he wrote a 500-word letter to the Times, which finally appeared on the 2nd of August, openly identifying himself as the subject of the Sunday Mirror's smear campaign and denying in detail all the allegations. The letter was a model of precision, describing how Lord Boothby returned from France on the 16th of July to find Parliament, Fleet Street, and other informed quarters, seething with rumours that he had had a homosexual relationship with a leading thug from the London underworld, that he had been to all male Mayfair parties with him, that he had been photographed with him on a sofa in a compromising position, that there was a homosexual relationship between Lord Boothby, East End gangsters, and a number of clergymen in Brighton, that various people knowing about these relationships were being blackmailed, and that Scotland Yard, after watching meetings between Lord Boothby and the thug for several months, had reported on them to the Commissioner of Police. Lord Boothby went on to describe how he was once photographed with my full consent in my flat, which is also my office, with a gentleman who came to see me, accompanied by 2 friends, in order to ask me to take an active part in a business venture which seemed to be of interest and importance. He explained how he had turned the proposal down, said that anyone was welcome to publish any photographs taken of him, and added that although he had since learned that the man he was photographed with had been guilty of a criminal offence, he emphatically had no knowledge of this at the time. He then refuted the Sunday Mirror allegations quite specifically. I am not a homosexual. I have not been to a Mayfair party of any kind for more than 20 years. I have met the man alleged to be King of the Underworld only 3 times on business matters, and then by appointment, in my flat at his request, and in the company of other people. He had never been to a party at Brighton with any gangsters, still less with clergymen. No one had ever tried to blackmail him. The police denied making any report to the Home Secretary in connection with him. In short, the whole affair is a tissue of atrocious lies, said Boothby. The letter concluded with a challenge to the Mirror newspapers. If either of them possessed documentary or photographic evidence against Lord Boothby, let them print it and take the consequences. The letter was signed, Your obedient servant Boothby. This attempt to clear his name by a direct challenge in the Times was unprecedented, but was typical of Lord Boothby's bluff openness and public courage, and it produced results. Just 5 days after the letter appeared, the Daily Mirror was carrying a new headline, Lord Boothby, an unqualified apology. All imputations made against Lord Boothby in the original Sunday Mirror article were unreservedly withdrawn. The International Publishing Corporation also paid Lord Boothby £40,000 in compensation plus legal costs. Reginald Payne, the editor theoretically responsible for the attack, was not allowed responsibility for the apology. This somber right was reserved for Cecil H. King. A month later, Ronnie Kray received an unqualified Mirror Group apology. This time there was no money and no signature from Cecil H. King. Four years later, I asked Lord Boothby about the case. He told me that in May 1964, when Ronnie Kray came to his flat, was the first time he had ever met him, and that Ronnie had telephoned out of the blue for the appointment. Boothby states that he had no idea who Ronnie was, but Ronnie explained to him that he wanted him to act as chairman of the Enugu scheme. When Ronnie called at his flat a second time, Boothby refused because of pressure of work. It was on this second visit that Ronnie brought photographer Black, asking Lord Boothby if he would mind posing with him for some publicity photographs. Suspecting nothing, Lord Boothby cheerfully agreed. Later, he wrote to me that the truth is that my relationship with the Krays was minimal, and the whole story is contained in my letter to the Times and King's apology. But for the Kray twins, this was by no means the end of the story. With their keen eye, the twins had spotted some of the possibilities in the incident and did their best to make the most of them. Up to the point where the Mirror settled with Lord Boothby, Ronnie had not been named directly. Just as Lord Boothby had originally been a peer who was a household name, so Ronnie had remained a leading thug in the London underworld. When Ronnie was named, it was entirely by his own decision and on his own terms. After the publication of the Boothby letter in the Times, Ronnie appeared to change his mind and personally selected the most flattering of the photographs, which were then taken to the picture desk of the Daily Express, the hottest photograph in Fleet Street, the peer and the gangster sitting on the sofa in Lord Boothby's flat. The Express paid £100 for the right to publish, and it appeared on the 6th of August. On the front page, beneath banner headlines, nothing could have made it clearer that the leading thug was Ronnie Kray. Ronnie's main motive in having the picture published was undoubtedly to try to cash in on the settlement. He was considerably aggrieved when he had to content himself with an apology and nothing more. But the indirect benefits the Sunday Mirror libel brought him were considerable. The first was with the press. There had been the beginning of a press campaign on the frightening growth of lawlessness, extortion, blackmail and intimidation in London in the Sunday Mirror in the week following the libel, and for the first time the twins were being brought to the attention of the public. Once the libel case came up, all this was over. Had the Sunday Mirror pursued its investigations of the Krays' criminal affairs, it could have been legally dangerous for them, breaking the spirit of their apology to Ronnie and bearing the appearance of revenge. Not surprisingly, the editors of other papers, having no desire for legal trouble either, kept off the subject of the twins as well. For the next 3 years, the Krays were to be immune to press investigation, and on the few occasions when they were mentioned, they found themselves referred to as those well-known East End sporting brothers. With the police, the effects of the libel were more subtle and still more far-reaching. Though Sir Joseph Simpson had made a public denial of a police investigation into a relationship between a peer and a man with a criminal record, there emphatically had been an investigation of the Krays and their activities: protection, fraud, blackmail, wounding and intimidation. This had been in progress since the start of 1964, when Nipper Reed had been promoted Detective Chief Inspector and attached to West End Central Police Station under Chief Superintendent Gerard. From all that he had learned, Reed had few illusions about the twins and knew that they were no ordinary gangsters. The flat at Cedra Court was under observation. Their parties and unusual social connections had all been duly noted. With the people they were meeting and their backstairs influence at all levels of society, the twins were moving towards the invulnerability of the big-time organizing criminals of the States. If this continued, Reed feared that they might soon be too powerful to touch. Unsuspected by the twins, the police had a case virtually prepared when the Sunday Mirror sounded the alarm with its first article. Once this had happened, the twins were warned. More important still, because of the Commissioner's denial of the investigation, much of the earlier evidence against the twins became unusable. Largely because of this, much police work against the twins and their organization had to stop. Despite these difficulties, Superintendent Gerard and Inspector Reed still hoped for a chance to catch the twins, although since the Sunday Mirror libel, potential witnesses were warier than ever of speaking out against them. Just after Christmas, it seemed that the twins had suddenly slipped up, and Gerard and Reed made ready to stake everything on one last throw. Orders had reached them from above that the Kray case was to be settled one way or the other quickly. Most of Reed's hopes rested on a man called Hugh McCowan, son of a wealthy baronet. He was a well-known West End figure. The twins had known him at Esmeralda's barn and tried to borrow money from him for their Nigerian scheme. McCowan put his money into a club instead, the Hideaway in Soho. Soon afterwards, he was in touch with Reed, claiming that the twins were asking for a half share in his profits. It was unique to find the owner of a club willing to stand up to the twins, but there was no corroboration of McCowan's story until one night in January 1965. There was an upset at the Hideaway with pictures smashed and threats before witnesses. Police were called and a man arrested. Reed sensed that here he had the basis of a charge against the twins at last, for the man who caused the trouble was their friend and drinking partner, Mad Teddy Smith. Smith had given a firm impression that he had come on behalf of the twins and was demanding money for them. This, with McCowan's previous deposition, seemed enough. On the 10th of January, the Kray twins were arrested and accused, with Edward Smith, writer, of demanding money with menaces from Hugh Cargill McCowan at the Hideaway Club. Bail was refused. It was a flimsy case, at best a feeble substitute for the full-scale police prosecution ruined by the earlier publicity, but there was a good chance that it would succeed. Reed knew the odds, and as the policeman closest to the twins, was banking something of his reputation on it. Similarly, the twins prepared to make the case a final showdown with the law. The twins left nothing to chance. They engaged the finest criminal lawyers they could find, Petra Crowder and Paul Wrightson, QC. Wrightson had impressed Reggie when he prosecuted him in the Shea protection case 4 years earlier. They also hired one of the best private detectives in London. He was to find out all he could about the prosecution witnesses, particularly McCowan. Thank you very much for watching. That brings this episode to an end. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the